Great. Does anybody have any questions about MOUs?
This is Haley Black from Oakland Community College. I just wanted to ask if we should have received a confirmation because I sent it late and I did not receive a confirmation that it was received.
I have to check with Kathy. I don't think she's been sending confirmation, but I can also double check. She just sent me a list a little while ago of the ones that she had received. So I will be reaching out to people from whom we did not receive an MOU
Okay.
in probably tomorrow. Oh, she did.
Thank you so much.
Good. Mostly, I think we're going to reach out to the people that did not send it in and check to see what's going on. So you should assume no news is good news if you have sent it in. Other questions about MOUs?
Hey, Jenny, it's Janice.
Hi, Janice.
Your J friend. And by the way, I was wondering if there is a negotiated price for Alex PPL.
So we are in the process of setting up a meeting to talk about that.
Okay, because I know a lot of people are thinking about doing that for the program. So thank you.
Yep. Reaching out about that to see what we can figure out. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
This is Holly Benson from Muskegon Community College. Since Janice asked the math question, one of my colleagues has been participating in the math workshops and shared with me today that there's been talk about math boot camps. But with those, I believe it's in the meetings with you, Jenny, he said that it's been recommended that boot camps are only a week or so long, and he felt like that format is not what's being recommended for this program. So I'm just wondering what you see about how the two programs interact, or if they serve completely different purposes.
So I think that Kathy Almy has been talking about boot camps in the math workshops. And I see you, Clarence, and I'll come back to your question. I think that she is talking in general terms about best practices for a math boot camp. And I have had some conversations with her about what this program includes. I would say that, this program, because it has these comprehensive wraparound elements, might need to be longer than a week. But it may be that, if you want to adapt what Kathleen is talking about and have the math brush up section be intensive for a week and then provide some college knowledge stuff in another week of the program and English in another week of the program, that's also doable. But this program, the academic catch-up program, is intended to be more than a boot camp. It's more than the traditional quick brush up boot camp type program. Does that answer your question?
That does. So, and just one final clarifying question is then that the math brush up boot camp is intended for a different audience, correct?
Yeah, you're not required to do a math brush up boot camp.
Right.
I think she's just talking about this as a possibility, which is not the same as this academic catch up program that you're putting together.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
To Clarence's question, you can serve Michigan Reconnect students in the academic summer catch-up. So as long as a student is new to the college and hasn't completed both college level math and college level English, there is no reason that you cannot serve them with the academic catch-up program. I think Reconnectors, it's an excellent idea because Reconnectors need a lot of the services that are going to be required in this program. So while the program was designed by the legislators, thinking about those students who had, recent high school graduates who'd experienced learning loss, there's no reason that you cannot serve Michigan Reconnect students in the catch-up program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more general questions before we move on? So they're not typically first-time students, but they may be first-time students at your college. They may have college credits from somewhere else. I think, I think Reconnect students can be served in the academic catch-up program. I wouldn't be serving people that had already taken several developmental classes and dropped out or completed a lot of credits. That's not necessary. This program might not necessarily be for that student, but if it's a Reconnect student who has been at another college and is new to your college and is, seems to be a person who would benefit from the program that you're designing, I don't see why you could not serve them with this program. Any more general questions before we move on to Precious's part of the program? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, and so it is my true delight to introduce to those of you that don't know her, or reintroduce to those of you who have already spent time with her, the Director of Basic Needs and Belonging, Precious Miller.
Thank you, Jenny, and good afternoon to everybody here today. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you, and according to my MPerks app, it's National Cereal Day, so hopefully we can enjoy some cereal later today to commemorate today's festivities. As Jenny shared, I'm going to be sharing some information with all of you today that will help inform the academic catch-up program that you are building and developing for your institution. And my hope is that I'm able to share some information as well as some things to think about and consider to make sure that your students feel holistically well and supported as we talk about the intersection that exists. Oh, it's International Women's Day today too. Thanks, Janice, for including that. We have so much to celebrate today, including everyone being here. Pat yourself on the back if you haven't had a thank you today, as well as, just being appreciated for sharing your time with us and sharing the time to develop the academic catch-up program for your college. So we'll start with talking about the 5 essential elements of well-being. Either use the chat feature or a reaction to just share whether or not this is something that you have heard about before. It is very popular in the Gallup Clifton Strengths world. And so we'll just be talking about the intersection that exists between emotional well-being, the well-being of students, why that's important and impactful, and how it can impact a student's success. So let's first begin by identifying the why to ground ourselves in our conversation today, because when we understand and know our why, the why behind well-being, our what, which is the academic catch-up program, has more of an impact on students. So when we think about student well-being, we must understand that students who are holistically well can perform well. And Cia Sheldon talks about this a lot in her book titled Bandwidth Recovery. She talks about bandwidth recovery, cognitive bandwidth. And when we talk about these terms, we're referring to the amount of mental resources or the capacity available for students to perform a particular task or to process and understand key information. So it's essential to it essentially can limit a person's ability to handle and process information at any given time if their cognitive bandwidth is compromised in any way. So when we talk about well-being, we want to ensure that we are supporting the well-being of students so that we're not robbing them of that precious bandwidth that they need in order to engage and fully become and understand the concepts that are talked about in the academic catch-up program. So we can advance to the next slide. As we talk about continue talking about the 5 elements, the well-being wheel that you see here, you'll notice some questions that coincide with each area: social well-being, purpose well-being, community well-being, physical well-being, as well as financial well-being. You'll see these questions, and you can consider weaving these questions into your program design to encourage your students to begin answering or developing an answer for how they'll go about addressing some of these questions here. These are key questions and topics that would be helpful for students to be secure in when they enroll in the fall semester, but as well as beyond, right? So students who come into our spaces during this program, this is just one stop on their academic journey, and we want to make the most of it. So when we encourage students to think about, okay, what's your long-term career? When we think about purpose well-being, I enjoy what I do every day. Believe it or not many of those in their profession can say that they truly enjoy doing what they're doing, that they enjoy what they do every day. So how can we light the fire, so to speak, to make sure that students understand the return on their investment when they're fully engaging in the academic catch-up program? We can go to the next slide. So we'll spend some time talking about each area individually, starting with social well-being. If you take a moment and think about a memory that you, a fond memory that you have, or an experience that you had or really enjoyed. When you think about that experience, it often it could have included other people. So social well-being is something that we can't downplay and must certainly make sure that we are supporting for students. And when we talk about social well-being, we're talking about an individual's ability to form and maintain meaningful relationships with others. This area is important because strong social connections can provide us with emotional and practical support during stressful times. We certainly saw this during the height of the pandemic. Studies have also shown that social isolation can lead to loneliness and negatively impacts our physical and mental health. When students feel isolated, they're less likely to be engaged and want to attend to the program. And so we want to make sure that we are highlighting this in the structure. Strategically building in elements of connection and socialization is going to be important here. So something you can do is consider how or who you can connect students to on campus. And if there will be currently enrolled students on your campus, you can think about how you can bring them in to speak with the students in the academic catch-up program to strategically build those connections and relationships. Or perhaps there's a colleague on campus that you would love to connect students to. Fostering these relationships increases attendance, it increases engagement in the program, and can also help improve comfortability with the institution. So when we consider that not all students as well come into this program with social capital, that connection and honoring social well-being becomes really instrumental. Not every student who enters this program may have someone who has attended college before, so connecting with someone who has experience and has time underneath their belt, perhaps another student on campus, helps foster that social well-being. So let's look at purpose well-being for a moment. And this may be one of my favorite ones because it's all about enjoying what we do every day. When we enjoy what we do every day, we are pushing the mission and vision of our institution forward. And I want students to know that they have an impact in this world, and participating in this program is the launching pad to get them there. So how can we connect students with their sense of purpose, direction, and their meaning in life? All of that encompasses the purpose well-being domain. So you can support this area by building interest in activities on campus, communicating the return on investment early, whenever possible, also keeping that conversation at the forefront. So not just at the beginning of, this is why the academic catch-up program is going to be so instrumental in the fall semester, but where the student projects or sees themselves a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. Students who understand how the program connects to their personal vision and their values, their goals for the future, are going to be more invested in the program too. So something you can consider is tying program experiences to the long-term impact of participating, as well as connecting those students' career aspirations as ways to promote purpose well-being. Another thing you can do is consider what experiences students should have during the program. Is there an employer in the community you could bring in to campus to talk with their students? And how can you strategically think about bridging and building those connections now? This program isn't starting now, but those conversations and connections should be starting now. The next thing we'll talk about is community well-being. Community well-being is, many of you may be familiar with Dr. Terrell Strayhorn's extensive research about sense of belonging. Community well-being is about creating belonging in the program, and creating belonging at your institution. When students come to campus, they are often surveying the land, surveying the individuals that are around, and they're looking for signs and signals that say, yes, I belong here, or no, I don't belong here. So creating an environment where each student feels welcomed is important. And how can you continue to communicate that welcome message throughout the span of the program, not just at the onset? Some things you can do is make sure that there is inclusive language and handouts and marketing for the program. I know that was something that conversations were beginning to talk during the last workshop about marketing and strategically promoting this program. Consider how you can make those communications and marketing inclusive to diverse backgrounds or diverse individuals. Diverse representation in campus activities and creating safe and welcoming spaces for students to gather and connect also help and promote community well-being and sense of belonging. One clue to sense of belonging being in place is through student feedback. Think about the student feedback loop so that this can inform how you have this program in place for future cohorts of students. And then students communicating their sense of feeling welcomed and included, regardless of their background, regardless of their identities or their experiences. That's another way to know whether or not a student feels like they belong and have a sense of belonging. Another thing to think about or keep in mind is the natural human tendency. Sometimes it's often unconscious that we pair ourselves with others whom we feel comfortable with. So consider early how you can encourage intermingling within the student cohort. You can do this through team building activities to promote community within the group. And this not only, again, promotes a sense of belonging and community, but gives an opportunity for conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice can be respected as well as celebrated. Okay, so now we're going to dive into physical well-being. I promise you guys I'm almost done. After we go through this, we'll have some college sharing, and then you all will have an opportunity to share some ideas and things that are top of mind for you as well. So diving into physical well-being, this involves everyone becoming an athlete. No, that's not it. We're not asking everyone to be an athlete. We are promoting and asking students to think about things that they can do that will help them feel like they have the energy to do things that they need to do. Physical well-being involves healthy habits, and we can support physical well-being by asking students, make sure you get a good night's rest at night. And one way we can promote this is by making sure we're not asking students to submit assignments at midnight. We want students to have the energy and the bandwidth to manage emotions, moods, and their overall well-being during this program, but as well as when they come into our institutions. In student focus groups held back in spring 2021, I want to share this before I forget the thought. We had a lot of students who shared they are unaware of what resources are available to them. And whatever resources are available to them, they felt like they couldn't access them because they were available to other students. So when we support physical well-being, we're also supporting students in connecting to the food pantry, whether that's on campus or in the community, but also ensuring that we're communicating to students that this is for you. It's not set aside for a particular group. It is for all students. So one thing that you can consider is who's going to be your point person on campus or in the community that can support student food insecurities. you want to make sure that that person or that organization's information is handy or locked in. So when a conversation arises, you can have a warm handoff to make sure that that student's physical well-being needs are met. And then finally, we covered the financial well-being aspect. These are organized in no particular order. So when we talk about finances, we're not asking students to be millionaires or to have millions available. What we are asking is for students to think about how they can manage the money that they do have, or perhaps leverage or braid funding to make sure that their college costs are covered. So in this particular area, we want to help students develop financial habits that support their long-term financial goals. And that includes saving, investing, managing debt, having a plan for how they're going to get out of debt. Those conversations can begin now. And you can support students in this area by helping them establish a fiscal plan for college expenses, exploring the salary of their future career, and also consider ways to actively integrate financial aid in conversations about FAFSA completion, as well as letting students know that the FAFSA is not a one and done application. It's something that they have to do each year. Again, students who don't have that social capital may not always know some of these things that are normal to us are not always normal to students who are coming into our learning spaces for the very first time. So we can go to the next slide. I wanted to share some information regarding MyBridges. MyBridges is Michigan's online state benefits portal where students can go and access and apply for state benefits. And this includes food, transportation, childcare, even housing, utility costs. I know many of you on this call are familiar with MyBridges, but for those who don't, again, this is a free platform that any Michigander can use. And this is specific for students who are over the age of 18. If you have a student who's under the age of 18, but their family could benefit from MyBridges, this is something you can share with them. The student is coming from a family, and when we support the family, we support the student. When we support the student, we support enrollment, we support retention, and we support persistence. So I wanted to give you guys some brief information before we get to the college sharing. We can go to the next slide that showcases what MyBridges look like when you actually go in. Any Michigander can create an account. This is an account that I created just to play around with it and become familiar with it. Everyone on this call can do the same. On the right-hand side, you'll see a red circle that outlines explore resources. If you're like, you know what, I'm not really sure, I don't know what I don't know, Precious. And if you think about Johari's window, sometimes we know what we know and sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So you can explore resources. The next slide shows it will have a drop-down menu that helps you identify different resources and community-based organizations that can meet a specific need. And they break these down by county. So you can guarantee that you're not going to get some information populated in on the other side of the state. It will be specific for your county. And that could be one way that you begin to develop some of those communications between a community-based organization who can serve the students that you are also serving. The very next slide is going to show you a brief example of what it looks like if you were to click Explore Resources. At the top, there's a drop down icon. I just selected childcare as an example. And then underneath the search bar are two community-based organizations that I could connect with if I wanted to have a go-to resource list of organizations that can serve the students that I'm also serving. So that is a very quick overview of ways that all of you can support the well-being of students, but perhaps you thought about some ways that you can also support your well-being, because as much as we're doing for students, it matters not if we are also not taking care of ourselves, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, we are absent. And if we are absent, we can't serve. So keep these conversations moving forward and have them top of mind as you are building out your program. I also wanted to give you guys an opportunity to hear from Kalamazoo Valley community Community College and Muskegon Community College. Both are on the call today to share some strategies and ways that they have supported students. I have some 2 guided questions here that MCC and KVCC can answer. And so with that, I'll pass the baton. Lewis, I see you first. So I'll pass it over to you, Lewis, to start us off, and then we can turn it over to Heidi or Patty.
Yeah, thanks, Precious, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, when I think about what ways we're planning to support well-being for this program, we want to rely on some things that have worked for us in the past. In 2021, we started a similar program for students who had interest in the KVAP program, which is a scholarship and support program for low-income students. So our goal was really just to build relationships with these students prior to the fall semester so that when they landed here, they felt a lot more comfortable about being in the space and seeking out support and resources. So one of the first things we did, we had a 2-week experience with these students. We met 3 times a day for 2 hours, 3 times a week for 2 hours. And the first thing we did, we just wanted to make the students feel welcome. We welcomed them into the space and we encouraged them to be them authentic selves. And we wanted to set the tone for a true learning environment, meaning not only would they be learning in this experience, but us as well as staff and faculty. So it was important that they were honest during this time and just kind of talk to us about what their challenges were and whatever questions they had, because we were able to learn from it. We also talked a lot about resources. So on day 1, we already began to bring in staff members from other departments to kind of talk about what they offered. Again, we really just wanted to create a very welcoming environment for the students to kind of foster that community feel. And every person that came in that talked to the students, they kind of talked about their academic journey, their college experience. And we challenged them to be vulnerable too, to share what their challenges were. And we found that that was very helpful and very valuable in helping students kind of talk about, what they were anxious about, what their concerns were. And then the last thing that we did that day, well, we didn't do it last, we did it initially. We talked about us being all in together, us being a team. We really wanted to foster that family environment. And one of the ways we did that is we just kind of, we shared our experiences, but we also challenged students to tell us why they were here, what they hope to get out of the entire experience. And we'd had everybody in the room commit to helping their fellow peer reach that goal. So again, it was ideal for setting a tone where we could talk to students about just about everything. Each day we would just kind of start with like a check-in just to see how students were feeling, if you're ready for the day. We also brought current students into the space to kind of share their experiences, to just kind of let students know that they were going through things that they probably would experience, but you can get through it if you rely on the resources and things like that. So that was probably the most important piece. And then just everybody who comes into that space is responsible for setting the tone, making sure students feel welcome, supported, and valued in that space, and respected. So a lot of inclusion, a lot of sharing, encouraging students to speak up, but then also being mindful of students who may not be as comfortable speaking up in that space. So not only would we have an instructor in that space, but we had several other staff members who were kind of around, and sometimes they would check on students and come talk to students, on a one-on-one basis to kind of like make sure students were doing well in this space. So that was probably the most important piece to ensure that that experience was going to be something that was valuable to everybody there, just making sure everybody felt comfortable in that space.
Thanks, Lewis. Is there anything that you would recommend colleges keep top of mind when they're supporting student basic needs, or anything else you'd like to add before we pass the baton over to Ms. Keegan?
Sure. We talked about purpose. We wanted to, set the tone that, we expect people to learn, so we don't expect you to know everything on the first day. It's funny, students have that expectation of themselves. So we want them to relax a little bit, but we also want them to have fun. So we kind of talked about, what the end goal would be. We talked about, what would you like to do at the end? What do we want to do for a celebration? Just to kind of give them something to look forward to. I think the last experience we had, we went bowling on the final day. So that was great. But as far as like the basic needs, one thing that we figured out that first year is it's important to be mindful about transportation. So several of our students who participated relied on public transportation, and their bus ran at certain times. So for some students, that meant that if our class got out at noon, they might have to wait several hours before they can get their bus home. So that's something that we learned, and we tried to put some things in place. So if students ended up hanging out a little bit later, that they could work on other things. So we would have students who may need to assess, or students who still need to complete FAFSAs and things like that. We would have staff available so that it can make good use of that time. Also, the food insecurity is very significant on our campus. 20% of our students struggle with some form of food insecurity. So we wanted to be mindful about that, especially if we're going to have students there for, maybe 2-3 hours a day. So we gave all students a voucher. There are several locations like around our campus where they can go grab a bite to eat. And that was really cool to watch that too, because we saw a lot of students who would go grab their food, come back to campus, and you would see that community kind of building amongst the students in the class. But the technology piece is something else that we should be mindful about. We offered a hybrid course, and a lot of the students in our class did not have technology. So we ended up doing some loaners for some students. And we also had laptops available during each class. And then we also, one of the things that we did on the first day is we showed them the computer lab so that they know where the resources were and things like that. And then the last thing I'll touch on is just, being aware of, what students might be struggling with. So we had some students who had some challenges. And, we had a counselor. We had the luxury of having a counselor available in our classroom each day to kind of talk to students if they needed to. So that was something that we talked to students about on the first day. We consistently just kind of highlighted resources and made sure we had people from various different departments just kind of coming in each day. And just, remind the students like, this is somebody that you can talk to. This is somebody who is a resource for you. So it was important that the people that we brought in were just as student-centered and just excited about serving students as we were. And it made for, like really two wonderful experiences, where students felt like, everybody who was in the space they could talk to, they trusted, they supported each other. And it was kind of cool to hear faculty who had participated in the event come back and say, hey, I talked to some of the students from the summer class. They recognized me and they came up to me and talked to me. So just establishing that foundation where we're all in this together on day one was very important and helpful for a meaningful experience for our students.
Thank you for sharing, Lewis. And Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the academic catch-up program, individuals can use their funds to help cover student basic needs if needed, like transportation, for example. I'm seeing some headlines.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Precious. So Precious, fast forward into year two, after learning from year one, when students signed up for it, we kind of asked about some of those needs in the sign up process. So like, is transportation a challenge for you? Is food insecurity a challenge for you? And throughout the class, we try really hard to destigmatize some of those things by saying like, bringing in students that have utilized the food share, students who ride the bus and say like, these are the resources. And because we had some data that showed that students who utilize the food share or use public transportation, they have better success rates. So we were able to use that to try to destigmatize, that, those thoughts around, asking for help and resources and saying like, hey, it's equated to success. And we had some success with that.
That's great, especially hearing it from another student. I can only imagine how more comfortable a student might feel hearing it from another peer. I mean, they can hear it from us as professionals or leaders on campus, but to hear it from a peer, it's more impactful, it seems like.
Yeah, can I just jump in 1 second before you go on? Because I did have a couple of questions, I feel like, about the requirements to provide the supports in the program, whether or not students needed them. And Lewis's conversation about the intake form brought that to top of mind. I think that the idea of having an intake form, but also the destigmatizing effect of, having everybody gets a gas card or everybody gets a bus pass. The question about the, making access to the laptops available, think about a sensitive way that you can ask. You don't need to make a student take a loaner laptop if they have a laptop, but you also want to make it easy for those who, because the program you're required to provide laptops, you want to make it easy for students to accept the help if they do indeed need it. So I think that's something each college can decide as they're walking the path. So, you don't need to force supports on people that may not need them, but you also want to make it very easy and comfortable for students to access those supports that are required by the program. Thanks, go on.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, with that, I will segue over to you, Patty at Muskegon.
Yes. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that.
Sounds like somebody else had their mute off. So thank you, Precious. And I am stepping in for Heidi today. So she was a little more prepared for this than I am, but she's out ill today. So I thank you for all that information, Lewis. I'm going to make sure that we go back and watch this recording to listen to all of the things that you just said, because I feel like all of those steps that you took are just great examples of what we all can do. From what Heidi told me, what she was really going to tell you about, and some of you may have already heard this, but we have a Jayhawk Hub here on campus. And so with the academic catch-up program, we do offer a lot of those same services already, right? So what we're planning to do is still make sure that we're giving those same services, making sure that those students that are going to be part of that academic catch-up program, that they're aware and know where those services are, how to access all of those services. And so that includes our transportation program, which includes bus passes, free access to bus passes that's unlimited to our students. And that's for our public transportation in Muskegon. And we also have within that transportation program, a gas card program. We are limited on how many we can give to each student per semester, just because we have to be careful for tax purposes how much we give to a student. But we do have gas cards that we give to students as well. And we actually have a conversation with those students when they come in to receive those, so that we can make sure that if there are other barriers that they're having to their success while they're here at MCC, that we can help try to tackle those things with them while they're here. That includes food support. It includes housing support where we can connect them. We can connect them to childcare services. We have, different groups that are on our campus. We're working with My Bridges. We're working with the Rescue Mission. We have connections with a number of different financial institutions to be able to help students understand, what financial stability is, and just, understanding how to budget, for example, as a student or as an adult in general. So I'm probably not saying things that other people don't already know about, but these are what our plans are for that. Now, specifically like for transportation purposes, I know that we've been throwing around the idea of working directly with our local transportation system to see the students that may need a specific bus, like maybe we can work with them to have a specific bus that would help that group of students. we're not quite sure yet what that's going to look like. So as we get further into it, that's what one of the ideas that we had. And Holly is actually on the call with us, and I'm going to put her on the spot because she's the one that's leading our group. So she knows more about this than I do, because from our perspective, because she's been talking with people already. So Holly, is there anything that you can add that I may have missed?
Well, I know Kelly just contacted me about having a van service. So if there are students
Yeah.
who are not close to a bus route, maybe we can hire a van service for them and plan that. I also met with our hub coordinator, and she came up with an estimate of how much of this funding would be appropriate to direct to the hub to support those services, because we plan on having her present really early on to the students about the services that are available. And we included use of the pantry and transportation and other services.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was talking about, the van part. I kind of heard on the outskirts, right? Because I wasn't involved in the meetings. But the other thing that Lewis mentioned also was about technology, right? So we have a large technology loaner program here at MCC. We are going to be going away from our hotspots because there are other resources that becoming available for that. But we do have laptops that we loan out to students. And so we're always looking for new ways that we can expand that program. It's through our early alert system that we hear about that, but with the academic catch-up program, we may be able to do something different for those students, knowing that they may need that resource very early on, and we want to make sure that we're giving them the resources that they need to be successful. So in addition to that, like, what should we keep on top of mind as we are looking at the basic needs? I would agree with what Lewis already said, but the other thing I would say is just for us to remember that we need to meet the student where they are. They don't, we've always said, oh, students need to be college ready when they come to us. Well, that's not the case anymore. That mindset has changed. And so we need to be prepared for what they're going to need. And the best way to do that is to have open conversations with them and make it welcoming so that they're comfortable with us, and make it so that they have that person that they can talk to. That's the only thing I can really add at that point, I think, right now.
That is so valuable. And everything you spoke about reminds me of that social well-being, the community well-being, and promoting sense of belonging. When students feel like they belong, when they feel like they're safe, that their information can be trusted with someone, they're more likely to share. So I appreciate you sharing those items of things we can keep top of mind. I have one additional slide that gives us all an opportunity to add to this conversation and share things that are top of mind for you. So these are some questions that I'll pose to the group when offering this program. What student needs do you anticipate encountering, and how do you plan to respond to those needs? Or perhaps you would like to share things that you have top of mind. So I'll just kind of open it up to the group for some group sharing about academic catch-up and basic needs. Who would like to be brave enough to share a question, or perhaps something that they'll take away from Lewis' remarks or Patty's remarks, or anything from the PowerPoint?
I have a question, Precious.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Michelle Kelly from Schoolcraft College, and my colleague Sharon Christian is here as well, and she's kind of championing this project. And we were talking about the laptop loan program. We have a laptop loan program, and we can't afford to, just get unlimited laptops, just like everybody else. So I was wondering if anybody has any experience with loaning out laptops through their library.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
This is Holly McKee, and I'm from Kellogg Community College. And our library just started this within this academic school year. So I'm sure that you could contact our chief librarian or any of our librarians, and I can connect you if needed. You can drop me a message and I'll shoot it in there. But they piloted it in the fall, and they have expanded it this spring. So that meant that they purchased more laptops to offer to students for loaners. And they, of course, they have a checkout system built into the library already,
Exactly.
which is helpful. But they would be happy to share those policies and procedures with anybody that's interested.
Awesome. Thank you, Holly.
Mhm.
Michelle, Trista from Glen Oaks upside down here. I'm actually the librarian and we have laptops as well. So if you have any questions, shoot me an email.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for your question. I remember in college, I had a professor say, if you have a question, 3 other people have the same question. So if there are other questions you would like to pose to your peers, you can share them at this time.
Hi, this is Kristen Slathiel at NMC, and sorry, my camera's not on. I'm just wondering how we're going to balance our students' work, like their jobs, with attendance. That to me, we're a big tourist area up here in Traverse City, and like all of our students work all the time. So I'm just worried, especially, those right out of high school. I don't know. I'm not sure how we're going to be able to manage. I don't know how they're not going to be able to not have to work during this time. It'll be tricky, I think, for them to find ways to set the time aside that this will require.
Chris and we had the same concern here at Mid-Michigan College because like you, a lot of our students right after high school ends, they end up working at jobs and everything. It's why we're really trying to design a hybrid program where while there is some initial face-to-face time, a lot of it will be done online after we've had the face-to-face opportunity, so students can go to work. And I think it's a balancing act of figuring out what's the right balance of face time and non-face time. I mean, we've reached a point in this area where even during the school year, 50% of our course sections are delivered online, whereas before the pandemic, it was about 25 to 30%. So it's the nature of the world we live in now, I think.
I think it's this is Holly from Kellogg Community College. I think that this is a really valid question, and I struggle with that just outside of this program. Like, how do we get students to do the things that we know are going to help them be successful while they're at college, but also recognizing that they have full-time jobs, or they have children, or they have elderly parents that they're taking care of, and different things like that. And I think we have a lot of flexibility with the parameters of this program to design it in a manner that is most impactful, but that is least disruptive to the students' other responsibilities. So it doesn't have to be a 40-hour-a-week job to participate in this program. So based on your student population, what makes sense? Is it a 2-week program and it is every day? Or is it a 5-week program and it's 2 days a week, 3 hours a day? What time of the day makes sense for your students based on who you're trying to target to participate? Does it make sense for an evening offering? Does it make sense for a morning offering? So I think those are the things that I'm looking at to try to see what best matches with the population that we're targeting.
A related note, this is Holly Benson from Muskegon Community College. I'm wondering how many of you are using the or how you are using the estimated numbers that we've been given for enrollment. A lot of people on our campus feel like those numbers are very high. And I'm anxious about estimating the budget for that amount and then having a lot less enroll, and then a huge difference in the amount of money we've received and then needing to give money back or staffing and that sort of thing. Most of you feel like those numbers are what you'll get enrolled. I see 1/3.
I think, and I can't recall what the exact number is for us at the time, but I feel like when I first looked at it, I thought it was an optimistic number just because my prior experience with, similar populations and similar experiences, and some of the challenges that you all mentioned with the summer jobs and, students just graduating from high school, there's sometimes a reluctance to enter into this, especially depending on how long the commitment is. But one thing we were able to do previously, and we did a little bit here at KVCC as well, we kind of got out in front of it and we promoted it. And we had some alignment with the school districts who were on board, who got behind us. And we said, this is what we want to offer. These are the outcomes we expect to see. And then we talked about some incentives that we were able to offer at the time. And so that really helped us because we had people in the schools, whether it's a counselor or a teacher, that said, I think this will be a great opportunity for you. And we already had like our dates and times. So students who had maybe a flexible job can go in and say, hey, on these 3 days during these next 3 weeks, can you be flexible with my schedule? And a lot of students had some success with that. But we also did offer it at multiple times. So we had a morning class, we had a midday class, and we had an evening class, which surprisingly filled up as well. So.
Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you, Holly, for bringing that question up. I think I wanted to just put a plug in at our workshop on the 21st. We will talk about recruiting. So I'm actually going to reach out to some of you to see, how you are planning to recruit for this program, so we can have some sharing from some people who feel confident about it, as well as opportunity to have a lot of back and forth about the recruiting and the emerging consensus of wisdom in the comments and is that people are estimating low from the financial perspective. And I think that's probably the wisest way to do it. I think we hope that you will end up overperforming your estimate, but it's probably easiest fiscally to estimate low, and then we will adjust your budget up rather than adjusting down.
We have about 3 more minutes to maximize before we conclude today. Are there any lingering questions?
I have one more. Sorry, I have so many questions today. We were planning on doing our college success seminar course for credit and then having math and English workshops. But now that I'm hearing what other people are saying and thinking about enrollment, I'm wondering if that's just too much. We were planning on doing 5 weeks with the 4th of July off, having this class for credit, 3 credits, hoping that would be a draw, and then workshops and activities as well. Other colleges decided not to do anything for credit.
Kellogg Community College has decided to not offer this program for credit. These will be non-credit bearing programs. What we are looking to do, though, is to build in some course equivalencies, specifically for our first year seminar program, so that if students complete this, it will check the box for the first year seminar. We're also hoping to check the box for mandatory advising, our learning technologies readiness assessment, as well as new student orientation. So however length of time we build this program, we're hoping that the the benefit will be very clear to the student. Not only will they build skills, but they'll also check off some things that they would have to do in the fall that they no longer will have to.
I so appreciate the conversations in the chat as well as here on the call today, and appreciate your sharing of time and the ways that you are navigating this program for many of the colleges who are doing this for the very first time. But hopefully the structure that you're creating now will stand the test of time as the program continues throughout the years. Jenny, I'll pass things over to you if there's any last comments you would like to share with the group. And I just appreciate the time to share today. Thanks, everyone.
I thank you, Precious, for planning this meeting and for presenting, and to Lewis and Patty for sharing, and everybody that shared questions. And I'm seeing, still more questions are coming in. Don't forget, we'll have another session on March 21st, and then a final session on April 4th, which will focus on the reporting. As always, keep the questions coming to me in the email, and look for us to post the recording of this session and the slides on our Academic Catch-Up webpage. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Yeah.